Ubisoft used to make some of the most creative and ambitious games in the gaming industry. So how did the studio that gave us games like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry end up mass producing the same soulless open world slop every year?
That is one big pile of shit.
This change didn't happen overnight. Ubisoft's decline wasn't caused by one single bad game. It was the result of years of bad decisions from the company that slowly reshaped what Ubisoft is today. This happened for many reasons, but the result is that Ubisoft built a formula so rigid that even their biggest franchises began to blur together. What once felt like an innovative company with standout games like Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Far Cry 3 started to feel more like a machine, pumping out the same copy and paste games over and over again. A company that once was full of ambition at the top of the gaming industry is now facing dwindling profits and an audience that is slowly growing tired of the games that they're putting out. In this video, I want to take a step back and look at this transition, how Ubisoft's design philosophy changed, how their games began to lose their identity, and why so many players now describe their releases with one word: slop. Now, it wasn't always like this. Long before Ubisoft became synonymous with bloated maps and recycled mechanics, the company had a very different reputation. Ubisoft was founded in 1986 by the Guillemot brothers in France, and for its first decade, it was just trying to survive in the industry. In the late 80s and early 90s, Ubisoft primarily worked as a publisher and distributor of games, bringing titles from other studios to European markets. This gave the company something incredibly valuable early on: a deep understanding of how games were made, marketed, and sold, without being locked into one genre or formula. But Ubisoft's real turning point came when it began investing heavily in original development and, more importantly, new technology. In 1956, Ubisoft released Rayman, a hand-drawn 2D platformer created by the French game designer Michel Ancel. Sorry if I butchered that name. At the time it was released, it was a hit. Rayman wasn't just the first major success for the company, it was the game that put the studio on the map as a creative force in the industry. At a time when the mid-90s platformer space was crowded, with games trying to copy Mario or Sonic, Rayman stood out immediately. The game's hand-drawn art style was vibrant and expressive, in a way that no other game did at the time, especially compared to the more rigid sprites common in many of its competitors. This wasn't just a good art direction, it was a technical achievement for the team at Ubisoft. The game pushed hardware limits on the PlayStation and Atari, to the point where Rayman was originally envisioned as a 2D showcase that could rival early 3D titles coming out at the time. But Rayman wasn't just all visuals, it had tight and engaging controls too. The controls were responsive, the level design was carefully paced, and the difficulty curve demanded mastery without feeling unfair. There was a clear sense that this was a game made by developers who cared deeply about how it felt to play, not just how it looked on a box or a screen. What made Rayman especially important for Ubisoft though, was what it represented internally for the company. Rayman proved that Ubisoft didn't need to rely on licensed titles or external studios to succeed. They could create their own original IP and take creative risks and compete directly with industry giants. Michel Ancel became a recognizable creative lead, and Ubisoft suddenly had a mascot that would carry them into what they are today. This success gave Ubisoft confidence to invest heavily in in-house talent, new engines, and experimental ideas. Rayman wasn't a one-off hit, it was the beginning for Ubisoft's entire future approach to game development. In many ways, Rayman defined early Ubisoft's philosophy: stylish and unafraid to stand out. And in a way, with this game, it was the birth of Ubisoft. Things really started to change though in 2007 with the release of Assassin's Creed. The original game was a massive leap forward for the company. Seamless, densely populated cities built around vertical traversal, parkour that felt fluid and expressive, and a historical setting that was treated with genuine care, not just as a backdrop, but as a core part of the story. It was Ubisoft at its most ambitious, willing to push new ideas even if they didn't all land perfectly. When Assassin's Creed 2 refined that foundation, everything clicked. Improved pacing, stronger narratives, and more refined systems that transformed an ambitious experiment into a fully realized vision. And then suddenly, Ubisoft didn't just have a hit, it had one of the most influential franchises in modern gaming, setting the standard for open world design for years to come. Around the same time, Far Cry 2 was pushing the genre in a different direction. It redefined open world immersion through dynamic fire systems, a stripped back UI, and systems driven gameplay that trusted players to navigate, adapt, and create their own stories, rather than just follow a glowing marker like most other open worlds that were doing this at the time. This period, stretching into the early 2010s, was Ubisoft's golden age. It was at a time when the studio consistently balanced technical ambition with creative risk, producing games that didn't just sell well, but helped shape the direction of the industry. So where did it all go wrong? How did we go from the colourful worlds of Rayman to the checklist grind of Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Origins? Well, to answer this, I first want to establish what a modern Ubisoft game looks like today. At first glance, modern Ubisoft games look visually impressive, but once you actually start playing, a very familiar structure begins to reveal itself. Almost every modern Ubisoft title today is built around these 4 pillars, and the first being a massive open world that values size over substance. So let's look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example. England, where it's set, is enormous, but how much of it is truly memorable? The same rolling hills and villages, the same monasteries repeated endlessly? Or let's take a look at Far Cry 6 for another example. Where the island of Yara is huge and impressive, it feels strangely empty outside of enemy camps and mission markers. Ubisoft seems to be continuously going for bigger maps, but thinner experiences, and it's becoming a hallmark of any modern Ubisoft title, filling all of this space with busy work, thinly veiled as quests or missions. And that brings me nicely onto the next feature of any modern Ubisoft title, a map that is flooded with icons and busy work. The Assassin's Creed series is one of the most egregious for this type of game design. Just look at Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and you're immediately assaulted with question marks, side quests, wealth icons, mysteries, raids, world events, all screaming for the player's attention. And the worst part is that the franchise was not always like this. Take a look at Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs Legion does the same thing, replacing meaningful side content with endless recruit missions and collectible hunts. The map stops being a world to explore and becomes a sandbox to complete to-do lists. And this is a sentiment that has been echoed by so many other players over recent years. All of this is made worse by progression systems designed to slow you down, the third hallmark of any Ubisoft title. Again, not to keep coming back to it, but let's look at Assassin's Creed. And I only keep coming back to this franchise as not only was it one of my favourite, but it is one of the worst examples of a modern Ubisoft title. In Assassin's Creed Origins, you can't assassinate enemies properly if your level is too low. In Odyssey and Valhalla, entire regions are effectively off limits unless your power level is high enough. But it's not just Assassin's Creed. Let's look at the Recon Breakpoint. They went even further here, locking gear effectiveness behind RPG-style loot scores in a tactical shooter. These systems don't empower the player, they restrict them purposely to artificially boost the playtime. And then finally, mechanics that feel identical across franchises. Whether you're playing Far Cry 5, Assassin's Creed, or Frontiers of Pandora, one of their more recent titles, you're doing the same things. Clear enemy outposts, loot containers, unlock fast travel points, and upgrade skill trees. These are the core components to every open world Ubisoft game now, and we're seeing little to no variety or experimentation at all. I mean, I almost admire Ubisoft at how brazenly they can release the same game over and over again. It's clear that they have a system that's working, but the only goal that system has is to increase player playtime as much as possible and not deliver a great game that players will love and remember, like old Ubisoft used to do. And maybe the clearest recent example of this problem is Star Wars Outlaws. This should have been a slam dunk, an open world Star Wars game about scoundrels, crime syndicates, and life on the galaxy's fringes, but instead it felt like the Ubisoft formula wearing a Star Wars skin, like most of their new games coming out do feel like. The moment-to-moment gameplay was painfully familiar, repetitive stealth sections, safe combat encounters, and missions stretched far longer than their ideas could support. Progress felt slow, not because it was challenging, But because the game kept getting in its own way, for a lot of players, Outlaws didn't feel broken. It felt like time wasting, a game more interested in padding its runtime than delivering memorable moments. There was so many complaints when this game came out, and it should have been easy for Ubisoft. Make a galaxy for people to explore, go in space, land on planets seamlessly, like games such as No Man's Sky are already doing. But instead they took the Starfield approach, where everything was a cutscene, and the story felt way too linear for an open world Star Wars game. And this is just one of Ubisoft's continuous slip-ups that we are seeing with each release they keep putting out. For years, this formula, while creatively bankrupt, remained financially viable for Ubisoft. But in a more selective and competitive market, the machine finally broke itself. The reckoning arrived not as a gradual decline, but as a sudden brutal collapse. In January 2023, CEO Yves Guillemot announced a grim financial update for the company. They had cancelled 3 unannounced projects, on top of 4 others that had recently been axed as well. Several major titles underperformed, and the company was now projecting a massive operating loss of around $500 million. In the wake of the news, Ubisoft's stock price plummeted. The market value, which had peaked at over $10 billion in 2018, had crumbled. To right the ship, Ubisoft has been restructuring, but the moves have been painful. Persia: The Sands of Time remake was completely rebooted, a symbolic blow to the game that once represented their creative genius. Chinese tech giant Tencent increased its stake in the company through a $300 million investment in the Guillemot brothers holding company. While framed as a strategic partnership, to many, it looked like a defensive move to shore up finances. The turmoil was felt by the employees as well, with unions at Ubisoft Paris calling for a strike in January 2023 to protest the company's direction. So is it all too late for Ubisoft? Well, if they make a change, and I mean a significant change now, then no. First, they must rediscover franchise identity, something that made their games so special and unique in the first place. The strategy of sanding down unique series into one single homogenized open world template has to end. There are promising signs this is already happening. Assassin's Creed Mirage was a deliberate step back from the RPG bloat of its predecessors, marketed as a smaller stealth-focused experience, reminiscent of the original games, was great to see. It was a move praised by fans who missed the assassin fantasy that this game series originally pitched. Similarly, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown returned the series to its 2.5D roots, delivering a critically acclaimed Metroidvanian-style adventure that was celebrated for its fluid combat and satisfying platforming. Second, Ubisoft needs to re-embrace creative risk and smaller scoped games. Not every title needs to be a 150-hour epic designed to dominate a player's life for months. The glowing reception to The Lost Crown proved that a polished, focused and innovative game can generate immense goodwill in the player base. This is the model that built their golden age. Empower talented studios to create unique, high-quality experiences without the pressure of chasing gargantuan sales figures or to please shareholders. Finally, this all points to a renewed focus on quality over quantity. The disastrous launch of Assassin's Creed Unity was a lesson in the dangers of rush development, and the reboot of the Sands of Time remake, while painful, suggests they may be taking their lesson to heart. The recent major corporate restructuring aimed at creating more focused creative houses and giving them more autonomy. This could be the key to seeing the Ubisoft we once loved, which gave us franchises like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. If this new structure allows teams the time and freedom to polish their games and innovate, rather than just hitting a release date or creating another sequel, it could be a genuine turning point for the company. The future of Ubisoft depends not on its ability to build massive worlds, but on its willingness to fill them with passion, identity, and innovation that once made them legends. The story of Ubisoft is a modern tragedy. It's a tale of how a company that once defined genres and created legends chose to choose trends instead of setting them. They traded daring creativity for safe, repeatable profits. And in doing so, they lost the very thing that made them special. The passion that gave us Ezio, Sam Fisher, and the Prince of Persia was replaced by an algorithm designed to create endless, soulless content in the form of Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the same copy and paste game over and over again. The financial hit the company had in 2023 was a stark admission that this strategy had failed. But the question remains, is this a genuine turning point or just a reorganization of the same formulaic machine? Let me know what you think down in the comments and check out these videos on screen now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.